I was actually there at the beginning of the plan for transformation. The Chicago Housing Authority had been under federal stewardship for a number of years. Federal government had taken it over because the conditions were so desperate and buildings were not being maintained, and the condition for residents, both physical conditions and conditions of isolation, opportunity for them, were all completely unacceptable from a human standpoint. And in 1998, I was the Commissioner of Housing for the city, and I got a call from HUD saying that they were intending to return the Housing Authority to local control. And so I immediately jumped on the phone, went over and met with Mayor Daley, and he said he welcomed the return of the Housing Authority to local control. He told me that there were many people who said, "Don't take this on, it'll be politically terrible for you." And what he said was, "What am I mayor for, if not to grapple with the tough problems?" Actually, I thought at the time it was the only idea. The fact is that, particularly in the high-rises, that for so many years were blighting the neighborhoods in which they were located, and the conditions for the residents were so desperate and dire. The fact is, we actually had no alternative. Over the several years prior to 1998, there had been some incremental efforts to fix up buildings. When we were faced with what would it take to actually do a plan for transformation, we had outside studies that came back and basically said there is no amount of money that would actually permit the city and the Housing Authority to get ahead of the deterioration of the buildings. And so, from both a human standpoint and from an economic and housing inventory standpoint, I believe that there was no alternative. Faced with that, we had to say, with no alternative, what is the best thing to do? Beginning, the plan for transformation rested on 4 primary goals. Number 1 was better housing for the residents. Number 2 was revitalization of isolated projects into mixed income communities that would be integrated back into the fabric of the city. The third was absolutely liberating communities that had too long languished in the shadow of high-rise developments. And the fourth was better opportunity for individuals, both social and economic. So from that, risks existed in absolutely every one of those categories of goals. Tenets of the plan for transformation was mixed income communities. Would people with higher incomes live next door to people whose incomes were at the very lowest level, sometimes not even as much as $10,000 to $12,000 a year? Was that too much of a social experiment to actually ask people who may have different cultures, different norms, to live next door to each other? What would happen if you were trying to build mixed income communities where high income housing, moderate income housing, and low income housing would have to proceed at the same time to remain true to the notion of mixed income? What if, as has happened, what if the real estate market got bad and your higher income housing was not able to proceed? You're faced then with the tension and the challenge. Do you proceed with the lower income housing, which is not as affected by the market? So absolutely in every element there was a risk.
All right, so I'm here with Teron Cribbs.
Wells Community Academy on the west side of Chicago. I'm from Cabrini Green. Some of my best memories growing up is actually, well, from where I'm from, like learning how to survive, like knowing like what to do, like paying attention to your surroundings, know what's going on around in the world. Some of the worst memories would have to be like the violence and the drug use, and a lot of the negative stuff that goes on in the community. It really didn't affect me because like I stayed in school and followed like the education system to keep me out of trouble. Like after school programs and tutoring and stuff kept me out of trouble and off the streets. Well, I noticed like the community change is like more peaceful. It's not as much violence. but at the same time, like, you notice a lot of, like, 10 years ago, we was like on the news every day, or always had a bad reputation, and like now we have like condos and new buildings and clothing stores and malls coming around us and stuff. So it's definitely a better environment to live in. It's just like a better feeling. Like now we have like central air and better heat and like security systems and stuff. So like I feel safer.
One more.
Well, I felt like it was home, but at the same time, you could be naive and accept the way it was. I mean, it was wrong, so they had to do what they had to do to make it better for people to live. So I would say it was a success, but at the same time, I miss home.
We should feel, as people involved in it from the beginning, and as a city, that we should feel very good about the progress that has been made. It's been 10 years, and as a matter of fact, if you were to drive west on Division or south on State Street or north on Larrabee, you would see communities transformed. The physical landscape is different. If you were to interact and have casual conversation with some of the residents, you would find that many of them felt that their lives were much improved. That isn't to say that there haven't been problems. Like any human endeavor, things are going to go well and things are going to go less well. And Plans for Transformation is exactly the same. Its ambition was monumental. I think that its execution was spearheaded by an organization that was untested with a endeavor of this scale. But throughout it all, I think that the successes have far outweighed the failures or the stumbles. And I think the thing to say at year 10 is that looking ahead to a full completion by year 15, feel very good about where we've come, acknowledging that there's more to be done, and we have learned a lot in the first decade that should make the final 5 years something that will go by quickly, and I think at the end of the day we'll look back and say, well,